So good morning, everybody. I'm Marjorie Kaplan, and along with Lucas Markson, Lucas, raise your hand. We co-direct the New Jersey Climate Change Resource Center here at Rutgers. And Oliver, okay, good. I don't know if I'm going to get this right. Our center was created by state law in 2020 to carry out collaborative interdisciplinary research, analysis, and outreach to help New Jersey adapt, mitigate, and prepare for climate change. It is our pleasure to welcome all of you. Thank you for coming so early, but we have a really packed agenda. But it's a pleasure to welcome you all here to take stock of where we are in New Jersey on climate change and where we might go next to move the needle to addressing it. Lucas and I want to particularly acknowledge folks who provide in-kind support to our center's work. A huge thank you to Laura Lawson, the Executive Dean of the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences, and the Executive Director of the New Jersey Agricultural Experiment Station here, as well as to Stuart Shapiro, the Dean of the Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy. We have amazing faculty advisors. Several of you are here today. It's spring break, so not everybody is here. But Clint Andrews and Bob Kopp, who are both speaking today as well, and Tony Broccoli, Jay Gong, who I believe will be here today if he's not here already. Rob Lumbach is here, Robin Lychenko, and Julie Lockwood. Thanks also to Professor Rachel Schwamm, Emerita Professor Karen O'Neill, Dr. Jennifer Senek, and Lisa Aurmuller, who are all part of our Rutgers in-kind helpers. Also giving of their time is the planning committee for today's event. Many are also the external advisors to our center. Alex Ambrose, you might want to raise your hand, but you'll meet many of these people. Rob Freudenberg is running late. Russ Fenari is here someplace. Ben Haygood will be on his way. Ashley Kerr, Martha Maxwell Doyle is here. Tony McDonald, I saw. Nicole Miller is probably on her way. Don Nusser, who is sick. Kim Scarborough is here. Liz Semple's on her way. And Margaret Waldock, who decided she'd take a vacation this week. As well as Mark Warner. Thanks to the Rutgers staff and students helping today, including a big shout out to Dr. Oliver Stringham, who we couldn't do this without. So thank you. So on your tables, you will find these agendas with distinct QR codes for each panel. Please use those to submit questions for the panelists to get to as many of your questions as we can. We're going with this system, and our moderators will be curating your submissions. We want to hear from you. During the breaks or lunch, please take 5 minutes to visit the comment gallery outside the room. Maybe some of you saw it as you came in. We have a series of timelines related to climate mitigation and adaptation that Professor Andrews is going to be discussing this morning. We want your feedback on those actions that have been most positive for New Jersey and those you think that have been most negative, and why. And there's a table out there with Post-it notes for you to fill out and put on the timelines. And we also have flip charts and Post-it notes for you to tell us how you think New Jersey can set the lead going forward on climate mitigation and adaptation. There will be some of our great staff as navigators during the breaks and lunch who might solicit your feedback. It's all voluntary, and it will remain anonymous. At today's final session, for those of you who can endure, and I don't have a prize, but it will be great if you can endure. But Professor O'Neill will be summarizing what we hear from you. So let's take a second to talk about why we're here as we move into our first panel. A year ago, hard to believe, as we were planning and we began planning for today, we knew we'd be at an inflection point in our state, as in just 8 months, we will be electing a new governor. What we didn't envision was that we would be at this serious inflection point in our country on many issues, including climate. Professor Julie Lockwood, director of Rutgers Climate and Energy Institute, recently sent a message to our 200 faculty affiliates, which, with her permission, I'll paraphrase and share with you. When Gene Kranz, and now I'm dating myself, but when Gene Kranz, the longtime flight director at NASA, was asked if he and his ground team panicked after the series of potentially fatal issues unfolded on the Apollo 13 lunar mission, he said, "No. When bad things happened, we just calmly laid out all the options, and failure was not one of them. We never panicked, and we never gave up on finding a solution. We are facing an Apollo 13 moment, and the folks here at Rutgers are sticking to our mission to forward and build the community that fosters creative solutions because failure is not an option. The Earth will not cease to warm. Human and ecological communities will not get a break from the impacts of a changing climate. And as Julie noted, now more than ever, we need each other. So similarly, states, including New Jersey, have been laboratories for innovation and can continue to move forward in the absence of federal leadership. So today is about reflection, listening, and learning from all of you and from our invited experts who research as well as practice on the front lines of climate mitigation and adaptation. We're recording this event and we'll post it to our website early next week. We will also be preparing a proceedings that we hope will help with informed, continued civil discourse, dialogue, and action in this state. So, on to a little stock taking. Here's a quick snapshot of what's happening with New Jersey's climate from our annual State of the Climate report. New Jersey's warmed 4 degrees Fahrenheit since the early 1900s, and this warming has accelerated since 1970. We expect this trend to continue into the future with more warm extremes and fewer cold extremes. Average annual precipitation has increased since 1900, and by the end of the century, total annual rainfall is expected to increase 3 to 13%. However, extreme rainfall has increased, and in some parts of the state projected to become more intense by as much as 20 to 25% by the end of the century. Sea levels risen about 1.5 feet since 1911, and by 2050 expected to rise another 1 to 2 feet above year 2000 levels. Sea level rise enhances coastal flooding, also generating more sunny day or high tide flooding, as shown in the bottom right photo of Mantolocan. Today, Atlantic City sees an average of 8 sunny day floods per year. This is projected to be as many as 17 to 75 days a year by 2030. Global warming, observed over the industrial era, is unequivocally caused by greenhouse gas emissions from human activities, primarily burning fossil fuels. The state's most recent greenhouse gas emissions inventory has data from 1990 to 2021. Net 2021 emissions were 97.6 million metric tons, CO2 equivalent for those of you who are going to give me a hard time if I don't give the net 2021. So I just told you the net 2021 emissions. Transportation is the largest source at 38% of emissions, followed by combined residential and commercial sectors at 25% and electric generation at 20%. New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection notes emissions over this 31-year period dropped 13% due to the phase out of coal-fired power plants with natural gas and renewables, and improved passenger vehicle fuel efficiency. Yet some reductions are offset by demand for trucks and SUVs. We met our statutory 2020 reduction goal of 1990 levels by then, but we've got a long way to go to meet the interim 2030 goal and even further to get to the 2050 goal of 80% reduction from 2006. You can see the dip in the bottom graph during the pandemic, but we climbed right back up afterwards. We have 5 years to meet the 2030 goal, which is a 38% reduction from where our emissions were in 2021. So we'd need about 4.1 million metric tons reductions annually between 2021 and 2030. But in the 5 years prior to the pandemic, we were achieving just under 1 million metric ton of reduction a year. But we'll see when the next inventory comes out how well we're doing. To reach 2050, we need to reduce emissions 75%. Draft Energy Master Plan materials released last week note that steep emissions reductions are needed over the next 25 years to hit the 20 2050 target, requiring, quote, a significant level and pace of transformation, but that it's feasible to reach the state goal. So today we'll hear from some experts about where they think we can ramp up emissions reductions with a focus on the largest sectors, and I suspect we might have some takes on the draft EMP. I'm going to complicate it just a tad to say we're putting in our center the finishing touches on a report that looks how New Jersey goals compare to the Paris Agreement of keeping global temperatures well below 2 degrees C relative to pre-industrial temperatures by 2100 and pursuing efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees C by 2100. Our analysis finds New Jersey's 2030 interim goals are in line with a 1.5 degree future, but our current goal for 2050 is most consistent with warming to 2 degrees C, which is not in alignment with the Paris Agreement of keeping global temperatures well below 2 degrees C. Therefore, to be consistent with Paris, as well as these 16 other states in blue in the US with net zero goals, including our neighbors New York and Delaware, the US Climate Alliance, of which we are a member, and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, the state would need to amend its 2050 goal to net zero emissions. We must also continue to adapt to climate change, addressing the range of impacts from extreme heat, high temperatures, flooding, drought, sea level rise. We are finalizing another analysis in the coming weeks of property potentially impacted by current and future flood hazards statewide and the economic value of structures at risk on these properties. For stock-taking purposes, which is what I'm here to talk about, we share this with you as just an indicator of what is at stake locally. Today, coastal areas of New Jersey have a 50% chance of experiencing an approximate 2-foot coastal flood event in any given year. There are about 25,000 properties in the coastal region today at risk from this type of flood event. The assessed property value of these structures is roughly $7 billion. Models tell us coastal New Jersey is likely to experience as much as 2 feet of sea level rise by 2050, meaning the properties impacted by floods like these today would be permanently inundated in the future. If we look at future compound risk and add today's 50% chance flood event onto an anticipated 2 feet of sea level rise, these areas could experience 4 to 5 feet total of coastal flooding by 2050, increasing the number of properties at risk from such an event to 150,000 or 5 times the number at risk today. In today's dollars, the assessed values of these structures is roughly $68.5 billion. These images illustrate this information for one zoomed-in area of the state, and so this is my little fast stock taking for today. We look forward to hearing from our experts to help us all think about ways to support accelerating, addressing these and related issues in New Jersey. And with that, let's move into the first plenary. It is my real pleasure to welcome Dr. Clinton Andrews, a distinguished professor, associate dean for research, and director of the Center for Urban Policy Research at the Blaustein School of Planet and Public Policy here at Rutgers. So, Clint, take it away.